I rise today to speak to an issue which I've spoken to many times on the floor of the Senate. It is the issue of the DREAM Act, a measure which I introduced in the Senate 16 years ago. 16 years ago, I tried to find a way to give young people brought into the United States who grew up here in this country but did not have legal status a chance, just a chance, to earn their way to legal status, to earn their way to citizenship. We set a number of hurdles in their path. We made it clear that they had to complete their education. We made it clear that they had to pass a serious criminal background check. And we gave a timetable when they would be able to reach legal status and not fear deportation. That was 16 years ago, and it still is not the law of the land. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of thousands of young people who fit the description which I've just given. When President Obama was in the White House, I wrote him a letter and said, "Mr. President, can you do something to help them?" And he did. He created something called DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It was an executive order which said to these young people, if you fit that definition of the DREAM Act, and if you'll come forward and pay a filing fee of $500 or more, if you'll submit yourself to a criminal background check and give us all of your background information about you and your family, then we will give you temporary, renewable status to stay in America, not be deported, and be allowed to work. It was a big leap for many of these young people to do it because they'd grown up in families where in whispered conversations in the evening, their parents had told them, be careful, be careful. If you get arrested and they come to see this family, many of us will be forced to leave this country. Be careful. These young people decided to trust the President of the United States, to trust the government of the United States, and to run the risk of disclosing everything, giving the most sensitive personal information about themselves and their family. They trusted us, and they trusted this country to treat them fairly and justly. 780,000 of them came forward. They submitted their filing fees. They paid for the expenses of the government. And they did it knowing that even with this new status, this DACA status under President Obama's executive order, they didn't qualify for 1 penny of federal government benefits. And in working, they would be forced to pay taxes, which they were glad to do. 780,000. And then came the last election. The election of a president of the United States who had made immigration the centerpiece of his election message, who had really sown doubt and even fear about immigrants into our nation of immigrants. It's not a new message in America. It's hardly a new message around the world. Being suspicious and fearful and even hateful of immigrants has been part of human experience from the beginning of time. So what would happen to these DACA-protected 780,000 young people? President Trump announced through his Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, on September 5th of this year that DACA protection was ending. As of March 5th of next year, 2018, no one could sign up for DACA protection, and as the protection expired for each of them, there was no renewal. 780,000. The president then challenged Congress and said, do something. If I believe, he said, that DACA is wrong, pass a law, take care of the problem. He said that on September the 5th, and here we are in December, just days away from the end of the year, and we have done nothing. Nothing. And what has happened? Across America, these young people, their families, and the people who believe in them have begged us to step up and do something. They have said, in the name of justice, in the name of fairness, in the name of morality, do something. And we have done nothing. Nothing. Many of them have decided in desperation to bring their message here to Capitol. Right now, as I stand and speak on the floor of the Senate, there are thousands outside on the mall, roaming through the corridors, trying to stop people that they believe might be congressmen or senators to beg for the passage of the DREAM Act, to beg for the reinstatement of the DACA protection. Some of them have made great sacrifices. I've gone up to talk to a lot of them. They've never been to Washington before. They've never been inside this Capitol building. They don't know what it means to lobby. They can't afford a lawyer or a lobbyist. They're coming here to beg for their lives and to beg for their families. Some people are shunning them, refuse to talk to them. Others are gracious and warm and welcoming. They get on people's nerves because there are a lot of them, and they want to talk to people about solving their problem. Some of them have sat in our offices, even my office, and I understand it. As awkward as it may be, as uncomfortable as it may be, I welcome them. Because I want them to know what America's about, where people in this country have the right to speak, to assemble, to petition their government. They believe this is their government. They look at that flag and they say, that's my flag too. Legally, they're wrong. They are undocumented. Many have no country at all to turn to. And who are they? Who are these 780,000 young people? I can tell you who 900 of them are. 900 of these undocumented young people stood up and took an oath to a country which will not legally recognize them to serve in our military and risk their lives for each and every one of us. What greater proof can we ask about their commitment to this country? 900 of them. And if we fail to provide DACA or DREAM Act protection to them, these 900 will be forced to leave the military of the United States of America. They will be turned away, despite the fact that they have volunteered their lives for this country. And 20,000 of them teach in our classrooms around America. I've met many of them. They're teaching in inner city schools. They're in a program called Teach for America, which sends them to some of the poorest school districts in America. They are spending their lives as undocumented in America, trying to help the least of those in our population, those in desperate need of their assistance. And among those are thousands who are going to school now in college. And let me tell you, their challenge in college is a heck of a lot harder than the challenge for most young people. They don't qualify for any federal assistance to go to college. No Pell Grants, no federal loans, no, they've got to go to work. Work and earn the money to pay for tuition. That's what their life's all about. So for those who would dismiss these as lazy people who really can't offer much for the future of America, take a minute to get to know them. Yesterday, one of my Republican colleagues looked me in the eye and said, we're talking about amnesty. These are people who violated the law. You're talking about forgiving them for violating the law. Some of them, by his definition, violated the law when they were carried in their mother's arms to the United States at the age of 2. Does that sound right? Does that sound just? Does it sound fair to say that these are people who have broken the law in America? I don't think so. And let me say a word about their parents. There are some people who say, okay, I won't hate the dreamers, but I get to hate their parents, right? They did break the law. And technically, they probably did. I won't argue the point. But I'll tell you something. As a father, I would risk breaking the law for the life and future and safety of my children. I would. And most people would. And they did. It wasn't for any selfish motive. It was so their kids had a chance. That's what it was all about, and that's why they came to this country. And they knew at any minute it could fall apart and they'd be asked to leave, or worse. They risked it for their children. So I'm not going to stand in moral judgment of these parents of dreamers. In legal judgment, the case is clear. But in moral judgment, nope, I just won't do it. What I've done 101 or 102 times is come to this floor and just tell a story about a dreamer, so that people know who they are. Today I'd like to tell you the story of this young lady whose name is Karen Reyes. Karen Reyes is the 104th dreamer that I've introduced on the floor of the United States Senate, brought to the United States from Mexico, where she grew up in San Antonio. A childhood like other American kids, Girl Scouts, summer camp, church groups, volleyball. Karen didn't even know she was undocumented until she was in junior high school. She was a good student. She graduated with honors from high school. She was a member of the marching band. Here's what she said about growing up in America. I might be an undocumented American, but I am an American. I came to this country when I was 2 years old. The only recollection I have from Mexico is when I visited as a young child, and I've not gone back in 20 years. I grew up here. I made a life here. I made friends here. I received my education here. After high schools, Karen went to San Antonio College, then transferred to the University of Texas, San Antonio. She made the president's honors list and the dean's list. She found time to volunteer at the university health system and the San Antonio Youth Literacy Project. She tutored second-grade students in reading, and she worked with communities and schools where she mentored and tutored elementary students. In 2012, she graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies. She went on to the Deaf Education and Hearing Science program at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. In 2014, Karen graduated with a master's degree in Deaf Education and Hearing Science. Today, she's working as a special education teacher in Austin, Texas. Here she is with kids. She teaches 3- and 4-year-old kids who are deaf or hard of hearing. She teaches kids with disabilities. And here's what she said about DACA, which allows her to live in the United States and to work as a teacher, the program that was abolished by President Trump. Here's what she says about it. DACA made me visible. DACA made it possible for me to teach children who are deaf and hard of hearing. I'm helping these students and families on their journey to being able to communicate and achieve their dreams. Before, I didn't think I had a voice, but now I do. I get to change lives every single day. 20,000 other DACA students and recipients, like Karen, are teachers in our schools. Because DACA was repealed, Texas stands to lose 2,000 teachers. I ask the state of Texas, are you ready to lose Karen? Are you ready to lose 2,000 more just like her? Because the United States Senate and the House of Representatives refused to act, refused to legislate, refused to provide protection to her. As for Karen, her DACA expires in August of next year. This will be her last school year. If Congress doesn't step up and meet its responsibility and pass the DREAM Act, her time teaching these deaf and hard of hearing children will come to an end. In a few weeks, we're going to go home. We'll make it a few days, actually, I hope. In a few days, we're going to go home and celebrate Christmas with our families. It's a big, important time of year. My wife and I are looking forward to it. We get to see all the grandkids in one place. It's going to be pure bedlam, but we're going to love every second of it. Christmas means that much to our families, and being together means so much to our families. Think for a moment about those who are protected with DACA. This may be their last Christmas in the United States. They don't know where they'll be next Christmas because the president abolished their protection program and because Congress refuses to act. They don't know where they'll be, and they don't know whether they'll be with family or not. That is the reality. What a reflection on our nation that we've reached this point to punish someone like Karen, a giving, caring, educated, professional person who is spending time helping little boys and girls who desperately need her help. For some in this chamber, and I've seen them face to face, they're ready to tell her to leave. We don't need you anymore, Karen. Go back to wherever you came from. Just get out of here. That's their attitude. It's not mine, and not the majority of Americans. Over 3 out of 4 Americans believe Karen deserves a chance. Over 3 out of 4 Americans believe she should be allowed to stay and earn her way to legal status and citizenship. And incidentally, 60% of those who voted for Donald Trump happen to believe that same thing. But there are voices of division and fear and hatred in this administration. I've seen them, I've heard them, I know what they have to say. And the question is, will they prevail? Will they define this president in terms of his treatment of people who are just asking for a chance to be part of America's future? The answer to that question, Mr. President, is really not in the president's hands. It's in our hands. We owe it to these young people to do the right thing.